Most of the bridges in Winnipeg provide little shelter, visual interest, or opportunity to stop and enjoy the space. The spaces lack a connection to their users. They only seem to provide access between the two sides of the river. The majority of the people encountered while studying these spaces considered them to be only a means of moving from one point to another. A great challenge we face is creating space that will change the way the public will understand this point of transition that we call a bridge. The Main Street Bridge serves as a good example of an attempt to create a gathering of people on the bridge, offering benches and visually stimulating views and plantings. Unfortunately, these spaces do not seem to be used. This is where we must create a new mindset for the users to understand the bridge as more than just a way to cross the river. These spaces do not provide its users with a friendly or appealing atmosphere, especially after dark, when the mood around some of the bridges becomes especially hostile.
How would you define what a bridge is?
Well, a really basic question, right? One that's not necessarily easy to define.
Cross something otherwise impassable. Some kind of chasm that joins two sides together.
Something that travels over water, or something that you can't physically pass over without it, I guess. Some kind of a span that allows cars and pedestrians to traverse rivers or roads.
A bridge is a pathway over something that you can't cross without it.
Anything that allows transportation, whether it be pedestrian or vehicular, over an impassable area.
Like many things in Winnipeg. Functional with few bells and whistles.
And my immediate reaction is actually to think about what it shouldn't be, and for the most part, when we're building bridges in Winnipeg, we're just sort of extending the road over whatever, rather than actually treating it as something special that actually sort of celebrates and marks that change from one side to another and the crossing over something that's also important to the city. So, that it's a crossing and a connection is more than just a continuation. It's something that's the same that goes through everything else.
Okay.
The first bridges were very simple pontoon bridges. They were either used for the military or for areas that were not economically able to build a more permanent bridge. Elm Park and River Park both had pontoon bridges during the 1890s. The bridges were constructed because of the opening of Elm Park and River Park amusement centres. As a result, the area became a popular picnic and campground site for, amongst others, those who could not afford a cottage by Lake Winnipeg. In Elm Park, the location of the bridge is in the same place as the current Elm Park Bridge, also known as the BDI Bridge. The pontoon bridge in Elm Park was funded by the Winnipeg Street Railway Company that founded Elm Park. The construction of the pontoon bridge therefore resulted in an increase in economic gain. After pontoon bridges came the steel truss bridges. The first bridge built in Winnipeg was the Louise Bridge, built in 1880. This bridge was built in an effort to attract the Canadian Pacific Railway, the CPR, through Winnipeg instead of through Selkirk. It was used by trains, pedestrians, horses and wagons. During the late 1800s, bridges were designed to open up and allow the passage of riverboats. Early examples of concrete bridges in Winnipeg are the Osborne Bridge, the Provencher Bridge of 1918, and the Maryland Bridge of 1920. Most bridges in Winnipeg, however, do not create a sense of community. Their single function is to get passengers from one side to another.
How are bridges instrumental in our understanding of cities?
I think it's more like how should they be instrumental, because it goes back to definition of what it is and what it isn't again. And I think that in many places, for many people, the bridge is the only way that people know that they're going through something different and they're making a transition from one thing to another. So if you're not making that into something special, people often don't know what they're traversing. so, I think they are very important moments in how we understand. And in Winnipeg, in particular, the crossing of the rivers is. And the rivers are the reason we're here, so they should be celebrated, not sort of ignored.
The Assiniboine River encounters many different land uses near its banks between Assiniboine Park and the Forks. Land use is mainly residential south of the river, but becomes much more commercial and institutional as you move east towards downtown. North of the river, there is a mix of commercial and residential zones. The residential area is dominated by the Wolseley community, while commercial can be located along the Portage Avenue Strip, Polo Park and downtown. There appear to be many zones dedicated to parks and recreation to increase activity and draw people towards the river. Most of these parks are connected to the Assiniboine Parkway, which is a system put in place to allow pedestrians and cyclists to travel alongside the river from Assiniboine Park to the Forks. This system is heavily used and provides a more scenic avenue of travel than that of a car. Industrial areas are not found near the river, nor should they be, considering the environmental impact they could have on our river systems.
Do you feel like the bridges in Winnipeg are pedestrian friendly?
Mostly no, except obviously the pedestrian bridges. No, I mean, they're road bridges that if there's a bit of room left, they've stuck a walkway on the side of. And I think there's been a little bit of an attempt with Main Street and Norwood Bridge to make them a little bit more pedestrian friendly, but then this is sort of the opposite problem, because in those cases the pedestrian and cycle routes actually don't connect with anything on either side. So in that case, they are about connecting and crossing, so you've got to have both, and I think in that case the pedestrian and the cycle parts are sort of separate on the bridge from what they are on the side.
Not on the bridge, but it's not a good place.
No.
Just get from point A to point B.
Yeah, I wouldn't come hang out here.
Well, the old, was it Elmwood Bridge by the VDI?
Yeah.
I like that one because you can walk on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
How can a bridge function as a socializing space?
Well, I think space is probably the key word. I mean, there's got to be the space for socializing and understanding. I mean, there's got to be somewhere to socialize. Now, it goes back a little bit to what a definition of a bridge is, because what we haven't talked about maybe is the parts of the bridge. I mean, there's the crossing part, but there's also the two landings, and there's over and then there's under. So there's all those different places where socializing could take place. But the space has to be there for socializing, and the purpose has to be there. I mean, there's places to pause when looking over on some bridges. I think again the Norwood and the Main Street bridges have a place to pause, but not really a place to socialize. Esplanade Real, of course, has the restaurant, but then that's a privatized socializing space. So I mean, I think part of the question is where is the most appropriate place for that socializing to happen? And it may not always be in the middle of the bridge, which might actually be sort of windswept and unless there's, then built some shelter into it, and maybe it's not so windswept. But that place could happen at the landings. It could happen underneath. There's all sorts of spaces where that space could be made, but it needs to be a little bit more deliberate than usually happens.
In order to gain an understanding of the different types of bridges, a typological chart was constructed. Initially, 7 categories or types were established to which any bridge would be allocated based on their function. These were pipeline, pedestrian, viaduct, highway, rail and road, mixed use, and aqueduct. Here, the categories are organised by potential diversity and assigned a numerical value between 1 and 7, with 1 being the most potentially diverse and 7 the least potentially diverse.
I mean, a function of celebration. I mean, most of them haven't had that. Some of them are getting it back, but actually marking, acting as a gateway, acting as a transition, has generally not been celebrated. Rivers on prairie cities are not static things. They move, they change. and they rise and they fall. So design should take that into account.
A bridge is viewed as the entrance to hell in the 1972 film Deliverance. When canoeing down the Chattooga River in the Appalachian Mountains of Georgia, 4 friends travel under a log footbridge. A young backwoods boy stands on the bridge and looks down at the men as they pass under it. Symbolically, the bridge serves as a passage into hell. A bridge is portrayed as a metaphor for superiority in the 1952 film The Bridge on the River Kwai. Colonel Nicholson, a British prisoner of war, is forced by the Japanese to labour on a bridge which is to be used to expand the railway over the River Kwai. A bridge is depicted as a place of romance in Quentin Tarantino's Natural Born Killers, when Mickey and Mallory get married on the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge. Similarly, A Clockwork Orange, or perhaps not similarly, but anyway, A Clockwork Orange portrays a bridge as a place of violence. Here, 4 men beat a homeless man under a bridge because they don't like his drunken singing. The film The World Is Not Enough showcases bridges as landmarks. As James Bond chases a woman in a boat along the Thames, passing under various bridges, each bridge serves as site markers for the City of London. In Saving Private Ryan, a bridge is seen as an obstacle before a destination. Here, American soldiers defend a strategically important bridge from 50 German soldiers in the fictional town of Ramel.
Have you ever met a troll?
Do you know Jim Dyers? He was one of our speakers last year. He does neighborhood planning in Seattle. And he helps communities raise issues. And one of the things they did was built a troll. They built a troll sculpture underneath one of the bridges in Seattle, and it's made that a destination. I mean, people go to see the troll, and I'm going to show you a picture of the troll.
Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand.
With just a little imagination, we can change the atmosphere of a space for the better.
Barbra Streisand.